What's going on YouTube? My name is Kevin and I'm coming to share a video with you. But before I get into the video, I wanted to give you a little bit of background of the video and what it's about. Starting with me, I graduated from Morehouse College, and if you don't know where that school is, it's located in Atlanta, Georgia. It's an all-black male school, and I have my degree in business administration with a concentration in marketing. Um, Early, I would say around ninth grade, high school, I did a project. It was in an entrepreneur class, and we had to take a brand and we had to basically market that brand and do promotions and sell it and basically see how can we attract new customers. I took that project and I just ran with it. I had a really good time. Back at the time, Air Force Ones, Nike Air Force Ones was very big, and so I just took that and kind of did some different promotions and things like that, and I kind of made a good grade on it. So it kind of got me interested in doing marketing as a career, and I've always been creative. I know a lot of people say that, a lot of creative people say that, but it is true. We are creative in our own ways, and that was kind of what I wanted to bridge the gap between is my creative side. I'm into fashion as well. And then I also like marketing and thinking of new ideas and concepts. So that kind of pushed me into when I went to college, what I wanted to do as a career, which is marketing. And I feel like that marketing term can be so loose. I know when I graduated school, I graduated in May of 20,000. 20,000. I graduated in May of 2012, and when I looked for marketing jobs, they wanted me to sell something. They wanted me to sell different types of products to small businesses, and that wasn't what I was looking to do. I didn't want to sell, I wanted to market, and the type of marketing I wanted to do is pitches and brand strategies and different types of promotions and consulting. So I went to, just kind of backtracking some more. When I was in school, of course you take your basics, you take your math, your science and all those things, but then when I went to when I got into my senior year of my degree, or of my college matriculation, I took a class. It was a marketing management class, Dr. Hudson, and that class, it was just eye-opening. Not only did I love my teacher, I love the peers, the people that were in the class with me. The things that we went over were just so eye-opening and informative about different brands and different companies who I know we had for example, BMW. We went over them, and sometimes they weren't always on top. They kind of had some rise and some falls, and trial and error, which is something that I live by, about how to attract new customers and gain the attention of new customers and buyers, and also retain the people that are, I guess, they are loyal to the brand. So basically, we learned all that, but then also Dr. Hudson introduced us to, or introduced me, because I had never heard of the company or this person in particular, but I have seen his presence around. But Dr. Hudson introduced us to translation, and the CEO of the company, Steve Stoute. She basically told us about the brands that he has worked with, and I was just so amazed, and I was like, finally I found something, or I knew that this wasn't all in vain for me. I found a company that actually, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's other companies out there, but I just wasn't, I'm not sure how to get to them, and I didn't know about them. And so when she had told me about translation, I was like, finally, there's a company out there that does what I'm trying to do, and I know there's a position somewhere. If not, they can make one. And I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, we see commercials all the time, so somebody's got to be doing it. It's just not marketing, therefore you're selling something. There has to be some type of creative department in all this. So some of the brands are two that come to mind that Dr. Hudson told me that Steve Stoute has worked on was Beyonce. Back a while ago, she had a cell phone, and there was a commercial where it was a Beyonce where she was just kind of going about her day and listening to her music, and there's another Beyonce, really businesswoman, and they run into each other, and then they both drop their phones, and the phones come into one, and on one side there's an MP3 player, on the other side is your cell phone, and he made that commercial or created it. Another one was Chris Brown, and he did the Double Mint Gum commercial, and he's kind of just doing some acrobatics in the air, flipping, jumping around, but he also had a song, and I think they also made it a single as well that did pretty well, and so he worked on that as well. He also did Bud Light Platinum commercials. They have a wide presence, and they also have these summer internships that I'm hoping one year I can get one. I know I'm already graduated, but I'm hoping that they still do some type of training or apprenticeship at their company, that I'm able to one day just kind of see the process of all this, because right now, since I've been out of school, I've just been working odd jobs, and I haven't been on my career path since I've left and graduated from Morehouse. So anyway, Steve Stoute, once my professor did introduce him and his company to our class, she did mention that he would be coming to Morehouse. It got me interested. I was actually asking my teacher. I'm kind of a quiet person, at least I was in college, and every week, like every day I had to take that class, I would go to my teacher. I'm like, okay, when is he coming? When is he coming? Like, I was so excited. I had to be there. He came to the school, and I've just been kind of interested personally in this company, just that type of marketing, the brand strategy, I would say, and just trying to see how can I actually do that just for myself, to actually get myself involved into what I'm trying to do as a career. And so basically this video that I'm going to show you is his time when he was at the house. I hope you enjoy it. I hope someone from translation sees this video and they reach out. If you know anybody who works there, please just share this video, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I do want to say that I'll have more other things coming on my channel, and I just hope you enjoy. So thank you for watching.
Today's President's Executive Lecture Series features Steve Stoute, a marketing and branding powerhouse, who is the founder and CEO of Translation, the industry-leading brand development and marketing. Again, welcome, and let's get started. Who is Steve Stoute, you ask? He's so young. What has he done to earn a spot on the Morehouse College President's Executive Lecture Series? Even though you may not be familiar with his name, you definitely know his work. There's the HP laptop campaign featuring Jay-Z. You know, the one where you didn't see the face, but you saw the rock sign and you knew who it was. That's him as well. And then there are those State Farm commercials featuring LeBron James. That's him too. Now let's talk about what you didn't see. 1, he is a 2009 inductee into the American Advertising Federation Advertising Hall of Achievement. 2, he is a recipient of the 2010 Ad Color Innovator of the Year Award. 3, he is the former president of Urban Music at Sony and the former executive vice president of Interscope, Geffen, A&M Records. FYI, at Interscope, he produced best-selling albums for U2, Eve, Limp Bizkit, and Eminem. Surely you remember Eminem's debut album, the Slim Shady LP. Yep, that's him. In addition, at Sony, he played an instrumental role in launching the careers of Mariah Carey, Will Smith, and Nas. 4, he is chairman and lead investor in the hair and body care line, Carol's Daughter. He came across this one-store operation in 2005, and is subsequently the one responsible for growing it from a single store operation to a multi-million-dollar beauty empire with over 1,000 points of distribution, including Spelman and Clark Atlanta. His leadership also enabled the firm to form partnerships with firms such as Disney. Remember the Carol's Daughter, the Princess and the Frog collection of hair and body care products for children? That's him as well. 5, he is a civic activist. He has served as the co-chairman of the New York City Fresh Air Fund, an organization that helps minority children experience life outside the inner city. He has also played a key role in the development of minority recruitment campaigns for both the FDNY and the NYPD. And most recently, he joined forces with Mary J. Blige to co-found the Foundation for the Advancement of Women Now, whose mission is to educate and empower women through scholarships, grants, and career opportunities. And then there's number 6, which brings us here today. Steve Stoute is also the author of the best-selling book, The Tanning of America, How Hip-Hop Created a Culture That Rewrote the Rules of the New Economy. In sum, Steve Stoute is a cultural anthropologist who has his finger firmly on the pulse of what's hot now. He possesses a cultural curiosity and an instinctual ability to create corporate mashups between high-profile individuals and Fortune 500 companies that have sold millions of dollars in products. Here's one more introduction, and after that, we'll bring him out.
Justin Timberlake, Mary J. Blige, Eminem, Will Smith, Jay-Z, Jacob Kajur, LeBron James, Lady Gaga. What do these people have in common? One man with respect, purpose, passion, and perseverance. He is the embodiment of cool, the epitome of innovation, and the essence of substance with a fine blend of style. He is Steve Stoute. A native of Queens, New York, Steve Stoute has achieved a level of success that many only dream about. From music to marketing, from fashion to film, and even hair care products. Steve Stoute has been the catalyst for a major paradigm shift in popular culture. Because of Stoute's vision, the days when black celebrities were only used to market to their own demographic are now over. In his book, Steve Stoute articulates this phenomenon as the tanning of America. Hip-hop figures have become the face of some of the world's most popular brands. These brands understand that consumers may not be famous, but simply put, people know who when they see them. Morehouse College is proud to welcome to our Allen Halls this 21st century Renaissance man. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Steve Stoute.
Fantastic. Good morning.
So first of all, let us start by welcoming once again, Mr. Steve Stoute. We're always glad to have you here at Morehouse and in your city, so we're glad to have you. And with that, let's just go ahead and get started. So first things first, the title of the book is The Tanning of America. For any members of the audience that may not be too familiar with the concept of tanning, can you sort of just explain that to us real quick?
You know, for those of you guys who've seen a brief synopsis of my career, I started in the record business, and I went from the record business to the advertising business. In that transition, coming from two, at the time when I did it, very different worlds, very far from each other and understanding each other. That transition had me see a lot of different things. And in seeing those different things develop, I realized that there was a generation of kids, your generation, that did not necessarily identify each other through color, but was identifying each other through shared values. And I felt like that matriculation was something that needed to be identified. And I felt like hip-hop culture played a very lead role in igniting and putting an inertia behind that movement. And I call that blending, or that coming together of that mental complexion, tanning, which led to the title of the book, The Tanning of America.
Okay, cool. So can you go a little bit further into how music sort of helped to drive this phenomenon?
Yeah, well, what happened was, early on, when hip-hop music started, and the poets were telling stories that they were seeing, eyewitness sort of accounts from the streets. When you put stuff over beats, it makes it much easier for people to understand. They deal with it. It sounds less threatening. It sounds much more inviting when you're dancing to the story rather than somebody telling you this story about what took place. And that started moving forward, and there was music videos. And music videos kind of explained African American culture. Very early on, it showed why style, ebonics, the humor, a lot of different aspects of it that could not be told because there was no platform to tell it, was being told, the culture was being told through music videos. I think the breaking point happened in 1986. In the book, I speak about cultural curiosity and how important it is for us all to be cultural curious as we move forward as marketers, as business people, as entrepreneurs, just in wanting to move forward, not getting stuck in what you know, but being willing to find the comfort in discomfort about what you don't know. And an executive came over to Madison Square Garden because Adidas was selling, they were at 2% market share, which is not so good when you're at 2% market share. And he came over to figure out that 2% market share, the shell-toe Adidas was selling very well in the Northeast region of the United States. And they didn't know why. They didn't know why it was selling particularly well there. And it was like over-indexing, 10x. It was an unbelievable phenomenon, this one item, this one SKU, which led him to Madison Square Garden. And he seen Run DMC, it was the first hip-hop concert at the Garden. 18,000 people, and Run performed the song My Adidas. And before he performed the song, he took his sneaker up and put it in the sky. And 18,000 kids followed suit. And Adidas seen something that they've never understood before. That this thing was much bigger than just music. It was commerce and culture attached to this. And that's what led to Run DMC getting that endorsement deal. And why that was very important is because a global company then invested in the culture to create commerce for themselves. And I think that changed and accelerated the growth and the notice of the penetration of the culture.
I'm glad you brought that Adidas example up. Let's talk a little bit more about how embracing the tanning effect has led to the success of some firms and failure of others. Give us a few more examples of people who get it now and people who don't.
Well, there's so many countless examples of people who don't. You see it all the time. There's no reason to throw them out, put them out there like that. But when you see conversations and commercials in which you can tell that they're trying to force the language and force the conversation to show that they can relate to African American culture or cool culture, then you realize that somebody who's very far removed from it, just doing whatever they have to do to visit the topic. Visiting the topic is something that I speak about a lot. And you gotta not get in the habit of doing that. Visiting something is saying that you've been there just because you've seen it and you left. Right? You can't visit anything and then say that you're an expert on it. You gotta find a way to put yourself in it and understand it much more deeper than just touch and go. And that's what a lot of companies are doing when you see this lack of true knowledge of the consumer that you're speaking to. Then you see companies who do it right. Companies that, put the time in, put the investment in, understand what cool. Like we just seen over the last 4 years or 3 years, the Beat headphones, right, just completely put Bose in a bad spot, right? Put them in a bad spot. They followed the cues. It looked good. They captured bass, right? Which was what you couldn't get with the other headphones. Different colorways, different styles. I mean, a lot of different things that just truly appeal to what appeals to all of us, rather than trying to like take some headphones that don't work and wrap some slick language around it and try to get you to buy it. You know, you have companies that honestly put the time in and hire us, hire you guys tomorrow to tell them the truth, to really be customers of the products that they're selling. A lot of brands sell things that they're not customers of. The customers are not being treated like they're intelligent enough to understand and see that the brand is telegraphing a message in order to convince them to buy the product. Not because they get them and they're one with them. They're just trying to visit the topic of culture in order to get it to the sale. And we don't have to, like, I don't want to be specific of those brands because you see it all the time. It's countless. And the truth of the matter is, sadly enough, it's African American agencies doing it too. I mean, we know that. We don't like to talk about it. There's a part of it when you start to speak about it, it sounds like black on black crime, right? Like you say, man, you know, I don't really dance for food like that. Like, why does every car commercial have to have a guy with a deep voice? I don't really like that so much. You know, that doesn't appeal to me. That's not cool. And it's African American agencies doing some of that stuff as well. I think it all needs to we can knock it off, stop, and really pay attention to what works and figure out the right language and the right tonality in order to speak, to customers.
Now, in the book you mentioned the term cool. What are the ingredients for cool, and what are some brands that you think are cool?
I think at the end of the day, cool is when somebody is, or a brand is comfortable in its own skin. When you are not trying to be anything you aren't. Anytime you see somebody trying to be something they aren't, you pick up on it immediately, right? You can get away with it for a few moments, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, that's reacting. That's not, and brands do the same thing. So I think cool brands are brands that they don't try to be anything more than they are. And we respect that. Like, so I live in New York, and there's no, this brand doesn't exist in New York, which bothers me, but I actually like Chick-fil-A. I think that's a cool brand. I think it's very honest about what it is. They pick the point of who they are, they found a very fun way to talk about it, they make a good product, and they don't try to be something they aren't. And people respect that, and they're cool with it. And in the same way I see Beats by Dre is cool, right? Very similar in its DNA. They pick the point, they know who their consumer is, they're not trying to be something they aren't. They're very highly focused on that topic, and that's what it is. And I think anytime you see brands that do that very well, you have to applaud them because they're comfortable in their own skin.
All right. One of the examples that stood out in the book to me was when you talked about Apple. One of the things that you attributed to their success, not only in the music industry but just at large, was that they did what they always do, which is changing the conversation that's going on in the industry. So I'm interested to hear what you think. What are the keys to safely and effectively changing a conversation that's taking place in the industry? Is it a matter of just introducing new content, or do you have to approach the situation from a different perspective? What are we going for there?
A lot of times, the industry and businesses run on a cycle of the seat of sameness. I'll explain to you what this is. Industries are afraid of failure so much that they'd rather, by far, copy the guy who's succeeding than try something new. It's one of the most embarrassing things about business, particularly in America, that you see all the time, and it causes an issue in the marketplace. Because what happens is the product becomes commoditized. And I'll give you an example of it. We represent State Farm. So Progressive and Geico were running around saying, 15 minutes or less insurance, and 15 minutes insurance, and insurance is cheap, and all this other stuff. And I understand that, people like insurance not to be expensive. That's cool. But what happened was brands like Allstate and State Farm. So State Farm is, if you add Allstate, Geico, and Progressive together, they are not the size of State Farm. That's how big State Farm is. But State Farm started looking at the growth of Geico and Progressive, and then all of a sudden, they started advertising their prices as well. So now you have all four insurance companies advertising cheap, 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 cheap. What do you think happens to the category? The category becomes commoditized. All right, insurance is cheap. So with State Farm, what we did when we won the business was, you have 18,000 agents. You have service. So how do we figure out a way to show the service aspect of insurance and not necessarily the cheap, fast aspect of insurance? Yes, it should be painless to get insurance, but you don't necessarily have to talk about how cheap it is. Let's speak about value. So the example I'd use is, everything is great until something happens, right? So you don't look for, if you were to go get a heart transplant or some type of surgery, you wouldn't look for the cheapest doctor. That doesn't make any sense. You look for the guy who can do the job. And you're looking for value, right? The best price of the guy who can deliver the job that's needed. So when we put State Farm in that business, by using their jingle, by using service, so you actually the agent, all of a sudden these things happen. It's funny, but yet it still highlights the agent value, which is their point of differentiation in the market. We've seen an upswing in their business over the last 18 months that's been phenomenal, that they haven't had in the last 20 years, because we chose to not talk about price, but speak more about the service-oriented value the brand offers.
Continuing the conversation about conversation, in chapter 4, Van Topper is the president of MTV Networks. In chapter 4, you noted that, in his opinion, everyone was speaking in the same language of music. So I'm interested to know, do you think that the language has changed at all over the past decade? And if so, what are the main messages that this dialogue consists of nowadays?
What Van Topper was speaking about was from programming MTV, that he noticed that white kids, black kids, Spanish kids, whatever, were speaking the language of music, so they didn't care what color they were. Their ethnicity had nothing to do with what drove them culturally. And so MTV could play a Nirvana video right next to Guns N' Roses, right next to Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, and it was appealing to the same kid because it spoke to them in music. And I think that that conversation and that dialogue, or that truth rather, has become more prominent than ever. The fact that music has become much more accessible. If you go and look at people's playlists, if you go and look at people's iTunes library, you'll start seeing a lot of varying music in people's ability and want to be exposed to different forms of music is more prominent than ever. And I think that is part of what this whole tanning effect is all about. It allows us to borrow from each other's cultures, borrow each other's music, listen to each other's music, enjoy the things about the other cultures that we like, and not feel a way about it, and not feel that we're doing something that's not necessarily right, or there's a box that we should be in because we're African American. We should only listen to XYZ and not like XYZ and the same thing. And I think that music has done a lot to prove that theory. Music has proved that theory out.
What I really appreciate about the book is you talk about groups of people and their buying behavior. You mentioned that historically oppressed people often purchase luxury brands as badges to show that they've made it, to show that they're on their way. In a recent Duke interview, you mentioned, or you talked about Kanye West and Jay-Z's Watch the Throne album as having relation to the tanning effect and minorities purchasing luxury brands. Can you share some of those thoughts with the audience?
Yeah. Well, just in general, growing up, you'd always hear things like African Americans, and this is all stereotypical stuff, so I'm just a messenger, okay? African Americans would buy Cadillacs. They would use Cadillacs. They would live in a shitty apartment but have a Cadillac. Or they live at home, but even worse, and have their Cadillac. And I'm like, okay, it's all right, I understand that. But no one really tapped in deep. It has nothing to do with African Americans. If you look at Asians or Russians or people who come from oppressed places, they use luxury brands to define themselves. That's just human nature. Like, I made it. Look, I want you to know I made it because I already know what you think about me already. So if I have something that's a visual code to say that I'm different, that I've done something that you can't, so I can take the edge off of your feelings towards me, and it makes, or it makes me feel good that I was able to purchase something to give myself a certain level of inspiration or aspiration. I think that that's something that's overlooked. And yes, oppressed people typically coming out the gate use brands as badges to say, look at me now. I don't think anything wrong with that. You know, I think you could go too far with it, right? I mean, we could go too far with anything, but I think that's a common denominator amongst people. What rap music has done specifically is educate many of folks on luxury brands. What luxury brands, how to wear the luxury brands, putting it in the videos, and the luxury brand guys were very wary about what that meant. We've seen the complete ridiculous approach from the chairman, Stoute, right, who basically said, we don't make that champagne for them. I mean, there's so much racism in that remark, it's ridiculous. He could have just said thank you, right, for all of the work that was done by the artists that promoted his brand and didn't make any money at all for it. And then you have the luxury brands who are much more, they do say thank you. They find ways to reach out to the artists who help promote their brand and do stuff for them in order to be a part of the conversation going forward. So I think that luxury brands have benefited a lot from the culture that hip hop has created. And when you look at the artists who led that, the Jay-Z's, the Kanye's, the Biggie, and all the other artists, Lil Wayne, all the artists who use luxury brands in their lines in order to accentuate a point, it's been beneficial to the industry overall.
All right, so I'm gonna go back to 2010 for a second. So towards the end of the year, R&I Creative, they released their influencer documentary, which the audience got to see your video from the in-depth series. I got excited when I first saw it because to me it was sort of like this conversation that has been taking place with amongst a few individuals, with yourself being included, that was finally open to a more mainstream audience. And the conversation talking about how cool and influence is built, not only built, but developed and spread throughout our country and over time. So I want to play what I'm going to call a three-point game with you right now. So I'm going to throw 3 words at you, and I want you in three sentences or less to describe each of these words. You cool with that? That's good? You ready for it?
I guess, let me the rules again.
Okay, so I'm going to throw 3 words at you. I just want you to describe them in 3 sentences or less. So as succinctly as you can, just throw out what you think they mean. Okay, so the first word, and all these words relate to the influencer documentary, which y'all saw earlier. So the first word, as we touched on earlier, is cool.
As I said, comfortable, approachable, strong.
Cool. All right, you got 1 point. So
I can't lose this game.
right.
I can't lose.
All right, so up next is influence.
Network, leader, confidence.
And the third point is translation.
Necessary,
See, I got it.
no, it's not the right word. It's necessary. It's in a sense, it's democratic, and it's me. So I define it. Guys, when you come from, when you leave the record business, and I left the record business at its height in 1999. I just want to be very clear. Will Smith, Men in Black. I executive produced the movie 8 Mile. I produced Enrique Iglesias. I was doing everything. I did The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. I did everything. You know, I always wanted to expand and make music from different genres. It was something that was important to me to do. And when I left to go into the advertising business, people thought I was out of my mind. Why would you leave that big job? Why would you leave the president of Interscope Records to go work, honestly, at the bottom of an advertising agency? You know, based off of where I was learning the industry. And I felt like I could do so much more for the music industry if I was in the advertising industry, because I started to see that the convergence was necessary. Because I just started paying attention to that generation. Like, you start watching TV commercials and you realize it's so bad. It's so awful, and you see what they're really trying to do. So in the book, I speak about this LL Cool J commercial. So I produced this LL Cool J album, and it was a big hit album for him in 96 or 97. And it had Hey Lover, and Doing It Well, and it was big for him. So Gap called, and they wanted to put LL Cool J in a commercial. So they put him in a commercial because he's LL Cool J, this famous guy. Not because they know anything about anything deeper than that. They put him in a commercial, and he had just became partners with FUBU. He goes on the commercial. It's a white background, you know those Gap commercials. And he sits there, he has a FUBU hat on his head. In the commercial, FUBU hat's on his head. You've got to YouTube this. If you have not seen this, you must see this. LL Cool J Gap commercial. And he's rhyming to camera against the white side, against the white background. And it's like he's freestyling. So I'm asking him, I'm like, L, did they know what you were about to say before you said it? He goes, no, I wrote the rhyme in the car on the way to the set. All right. And in the rhyme, he says, for us, by us, on the law. He says this in a Gap commercial. So if you're me, right, not that I don't want to paint myself a picture that I'm this really intelligent guy that knows more than anybody else, but it's very obvious what they want to do, and it's very obvious they have nobody around them that even understands what he's talking about. I mean, they really ran this. They didn't know. Have you many people seen it after he said it? The director, the editor, the brand, somebody said, this is perfect. Nobody was around. And I figured, you know what? I know if that's happening there, that's happening everywhere. So I figured, let me go in that business and be the bridge between commerce and the truth. And there it is. You know? That, by the way, that answers a lot of questions, doesn't it? That example on the own.
So we want to move the conversation a little bit more about your specific leadership. What inspired you to start translation, and how did you identify that there was a need for translation in the industry?
Well, I think that, you know, the example I just said does a lot to highlight why I think there was a need. When I started translation, and anybody who starts their own business, you got to really deal with, there's a lot of fear involved in that. It sounds so cool to say, you know, I got my own business. I got my own business. I got my own business. It sounds good to say. And I will say this to you guys, that having your own business is not for everybody. And it doesn't mean because you don't have your own business that you're weak or not talented or can't do it, or it doesn't have anything to do with that. There's a certain thing that you have to have. It's like a gamble, because you're putting the best years of your life on the line. I mean, if I was 33 34 when I started translation. Suppose I went 7 years with it and it failed. What did I do to some of the best years of my life? You know what I'm saying? You got to be willing to take that risk. And how you react to that risk, knowing it, dealing with it, accepting it, truly determined, are you passionate every single day about that idea and about building your business? You don't have to be wrong. I mean, you don't have to, if you don't feel that way, it's not wrong. You may want to be a great executive at a company. There's nothing wrong with that either. So when I started translation, I had done everything I did as an employee in the record business, and I figured I wanted to start this business, and it was very scary. It was very scary in the beginning. You know, how am I going to get my first client? I would go in rooms and there'd be McKinsey guys in the room. I'm like, man, these are McKinsey guys in the room. I'm in the room. And the first thing was HP, Hewlett Packard was my first client. So here goes the story. So a woman named Carly Farina is the CEO of HP. And this is a big deal. She's a woman, she's the CEO of a big company, right? It was the largest computing company in the world at the time. So in order for that brand to be cool, they did a deal with Apple. And they made an Apple iPod by HP. You can do the research on this. This is unbelievable. That Apple allowed, and why Apple did this deal was because when Apple back then, it was small. And they only sold iPods in very limited distribution. It wasn't in Best Buy, it wasn't in CompUSA, it wasn't in all these stores. So they wanted HP's sales team to distribute this product, because the more people who had that product, the more people went to iTunes. iTunes is the business. iPod is just, you know what I'm saying? iTunes is the business. That's the centralized system that we all work off of. So, here goes the rules of the deal. You can't change the packaging. You can make this much money on the product, and HP couldn't be in the music business for 5 years. That's the deal. So, I'm trying to figure out what did HP get. So we go to a meeting, and they're going to announce this to Wall Street at this meeting in a week, and the woman is, Carly Farina is there, and she shows me the HP version of the iPod. It's white. It looks nothing different. There's a little HP etched in the back. That's it. And I'm like, if you come out and reveal this, people, what you're going to be unveiling is that you really cut a bad deal. You got to do something. They couldn't do nothing to it. So I sat in the room with all the McKinsey guys in the room and all that. HP has a powerful printing business. They sell more ink than anybody. That's their business, ink. So what I thought of was, why don't we make, you know when you get the iPod or any device, that little plastic thing that's on top that some people leave on too long because they want to keep their product. I make fun of those people. They want to keep it on too long, they don't want to wear scratches. Right? That film. So what I did was I said, let's make that. And we call it skins. Right? And HP will make skins, a template that was clear. And what I did was cut licensing deals with the NFL, the NBA, or whatever, so that when you bought HP product, you can buy these blank skins and then print on them at home to go with your iPod. So we couldn't sell more iPods, but we were selling printing product that went with that iPod. So we found a way to back ourselves into our core business. So we didn't make any money off the iPod, but we would make money off of printing the accessory that would go on your iPod. That ended up being one of the best inventions in 2004 Time magazine, and really put my company on the map. But when I realized that the guys from McKinsey didn't come up with that, they were actually okay with her going on stage, unveiling an iPod, I realized there's so much opportunity in this business, I was just like ready to go. Because, you know, it needs energy, it needs resourcefulness. You know, anytime you come from, whether it be nothing or meager circumstances, it forces you to be resourceful. Black people are some resourceful people. We've stretched a lot of things in our life, right? We're very resourceful people because we had to be. And when you apply that level of knowledge and resourceful thinking in business, you start seeing opportunities wherever people run into dead ends. You know, and that's the thing you can't lose. You know, don't let college take that away from you. Don't let your first jobs in corporate America take that away from you. That is the commodity. The ability to see and find opportunity when everybody feels like there's none left. That's when you get it in. And it's not hard. It's not hard if you approach it from the circumstances of I have no idea. Let me look at this thing differently than everybody else. Because everybody else looks at things the same way. It's easy to look at things the same way and say, I agree. It's the guy who's want to look at it differently and say, you know what, I think everybody's wrong. Why don't we try it this way? If you're going to be anything in life, you're going to have a couple of those moments. You got to have a couple of those moments to go far in life. So get ready for that. Get ready for a lot of that. If you guys really want to fulfill your dreams, get ready to be unpopular in a lot of boardrooms, unpopular in a lot of marketing meetings, but also the hero at the end when your theory is proven correct.